My sister called my son a loser at every family gathering for 5 years. I made sure she lost everything that mattered to her. But the fallout destroyed more than just her life. Let me start from the beginning. I'm Sarah, 29, preschool teacher in Denver, making $38,000 a year. My son Mason is 6. His dad Derek walked out when I was pregnant, but honestly, I was fine with it. I had a good job, my parents helped with childcare, and Mason was the happiest kid you'd ever meet. My sister, Jessica, is different. She's 35, lives in Boulder with her husband Brad, who owns luxury car dealerships. They have a massive house in Mapleton Hill, 2 kids in private school, and Jessica's Instagram looks like a Pottery Barn catalog. Everything perfect, everything expensive, everything better than mine. For the first year after Mason was born, things were peaceful. Jessica lived 45 minutes away, so we only saw her at major holidays. She'd mostly ignore Mason while talking about Tyler's piano recitals and Madison's advanced reading level. Then Mason started talking and walking, and suddenly Jessica had opinions. It started at Easter, when Mason was 18 months old. My dad was helping him hunt for eggs when Jessica said it was a shame Mason would grow up without a father figure, since boys without dads always ended up troubled. I pushed back, said plenty of single moms raise amazing kids. She shrugged and said statistics don't lie. By his 2nd birthday, Jessica escalated to calling Mason that poor little guy and telling her kids to be extra nice to their cousin because he didn't have a daddy. When Mason started preschool, she asked if I was putting him in therapy yet for his abandonment issues. He was 3 and happy as could be. The word loser started slipping out when she thought I wasn't listening. She'd whisper to Brad about how embarrassing it was to have such a low-income branch of the family. At Thanksgiving, she told Tyler and Madison not to make fun of Mason for not having nice toys because not everyone could afford a normal lifestyle. Mason was right there with his Walmart action figures, looking confused. My mom kept saying Jessica didn't mean anything by it, and I shouldn't start drama. Dad said she was just protective of what she'd built. Nobody told her to stop. The breaking point came at Dad's 65th birthday last summer. The Breaking Point. Nice restaurant in downtown Denver. Jessica had a few glasses of champagne and was getting louder. Mason was playing with Tyler and Madison when he accidentally knocked over Brad's glass of scotch, spilled on Brad's expensive shirt. Jessica grabbed Mason's wrist and yanked him toward her, said loud enough for everyone to hear, "This is what happens when losers aren't taught how to behave around successful people. He has no manners because his mother's a loser who can't teach him anything." Mason started crying, looked at me with tears streaming down his face, and asked, "Mommy, what's a loser? Why are we losers?" 30 family members at the table, plus nearby tables heard everything. Nobody said anything to Jessica, just awkward silence. That's when I decided my sister needed to learn exactly what it felt like to be exposed as a loser in front of everyone. Over the next week, I started digging, and what I found was gold. First, Brad's dealerships. I searched online and found news articles from months ago about fraud lawsuits, customers claiming predatory loans, forged documents, odometer tampering. Google reviews were brutal. 2.1 stars, hundreds of complaints. There was literally a Facebook group called Brad Morrison Ripped Me Off, with 230 members. The Colorado Attorney General's office had opened a consumer fraud investigation. I screenshot everything: news articles, BBB complaints, lawsuit documents, angry customer reviews. Then I dug into their finances. A friend who works at Wells Fargo dropped a hint that Brad had come in for a loan restructuring meeting that went badly. Public property records showed their house had a $1.8 million mortgage plus a second mortgage for $300,000. They owed $47,000 in back property taxes. Through a mom at Boulder Prep, I learned Jessica and Brad were 6 months behind on tuition. The school had sent collection notices. Tyler and Madison might get kicked out. Jessica's Instagram showed designer bags and luxury trips, but I noticed everything was from outlets or resale sites. The Aspen Weekend was actually a Comfort Inn in Snowmass. The new Gucci was from Poshmark. Through another connection, I found out Jessica had taken out personal loans from 3 different sources. Total consumer debt around $250,000. Credit cards maxed, Brad's dealerships losing money for 18 months. They were faking the perfect life while drowning. I organized my screenshots into a folder and waited for the perfect moment. Christmas Eve at my parents' house. Jessica arrived late in a new outfit trying to look expensive. She started her usual routine about my tiny apartment and Mason's Walmart toys, bragging about how well Brad's dealerships were doing. I let her talk, let her dig the hole deeper. When Dad asked Brad how business was going, Brad started saying Q4 was their best quarter ever. I interrupted. "Brad, I'm curious about something. I was reading about your dealerships online. There's a lot of angry customers." Everyone looked at me. Jessica tensed. I pulled out my phone. There are 3 active lawsuits against Morrison Motors, one for loan fraud, another for odometer tampering, and the Colorado Attorney General is investigating you for consumer fraud. Silence. Mom tried to stop me, but I kept going. Started reading Google reviews. Brad Morrison is a scam artist. BBB complaints about predatory practices. Told them about the Facebook group with 230 members. Brad tried to leave. I blocked him. We're not done. Turned to my parents. Did you know they owe $2.1 million on their house, with a second mortgage and $47,000 in back property taxes? Dad's eyes went wide. Did you know Tyler and Madison are getting kicked out of Boulder Prep because Jessica and Brad are 6 months behind on tuition? Did you know Jessica has $250,000 in personal debt? Jessica was screaming, but I didn't stop. So while Jessica's been calling my son a loser for 5 years, posting her fake perfect life on Instagram, she's been drowning in debt. Her husband's under investigation for fraud. They're about to lose everything. I looked at Jessica. You called my 6-year-old son a loser because I'm a preschool teacher, but at least I'm not a fraud. At least I'm not drowning in debt while pretending to be rich. So tell me, Jessica, who's the real loser here? Brad dragged Jessica toward the door. She was crying, mascara running. Before they left, she turned back. You're going to regret this. I said, I've been regretting staying silent for 5 years while you tortured my son. Now we're even. The door slammed so hard it shook the walls. Next morning, my phone exploded with texts. The family split into 2 camps. Half thought I'd crossed a major line. Half thought Jessica had it coming after years of cruelty. Mom called crying, begging me to apologize. Said the family couldn't handle this drama. I asked why I should apologize when Jessica spent 5 years calling my son a loser and nobody ever asked her to say sorry. Mom said that was different. Jessica just had strong opinions about financial responsibility. I actually laughed and said calling a 6-year-old a loser isn't having opinions. It's cruel. Mom said I was tearing the family apart. I said if they couldn't handle me defending Mason, maybe they needed to pick better battles. She hung up on me. First time in my entire life. Jessica sent 3 long texts calling me a jealous single mom who couldn't stand seeing her successful. Said I twisted everything out of spite because I was bitter about being alone. Said I'd always been jealous of her perfect family. I screenshot everything, saved it to a folder labeled Jessica's Meltdown, and didn't respond. Let her sit there wondering if I'd share those messages too. Then Dad called. I expected another lecture. Instead, he said he was proud of me for finally standing up to Jessica's bullying. Said he and Mom had heard her cruel comments for years, but didn't know how to address it without causing drama. Watching her grab Mason and call him a loser while he cried made Dad realize their silence had enabled her behavior. He wouldn't ask me to apologize when Jessica never apologized for 5 years of cruelty. 2 weeks later, Mason climbed into my lap and asked why Aunt Jessica was mean to him. Asked if it was because his daddy left. My heart broke as I tried to explain that sometimes when people are unhappy with themselves, they say hurtful things to others. It's not about the person they're being mean to. Over the next few days, I noticed Mason being quieter whenever anyone mentioned family gatherings. He stopped talking about wanting to play with his cousins. When my mom called to say hi, he didn't want to chat. The Christmas confrontation had affected him more than I thought. In early January, I ran into my cousin at the grocery store. She told me Brad had moved out on January 3rd. Holly had confronted him about all the business issues the day after Christmas, and he'd admitted the dealerships were bankrupt. The AG investigation was real. The lawsuits were real. They were going to lose everything. Jessica had demanded he fix it. Brad said there was no fixing it. So he left. Got an apartment near his parents. Jessica was a complete mess. Part of me felt vindicated. The comments about Brad's business had hit a real nerve. But another part recognized I'd just blown up my sister's marriage in the most public, humiliating way possible. Standing in the grocery store, I wondered if I'd gone too far. Then remembered Mason crying and asking, why are we losers? The guilt faded pretty quickly. Monday at work, I found a LinkedIn post showing Brad's dealerships had filed bankruptcy. All 3 locations were closing. Brad was seeking new opportunities, which meant he'd been forced out of his own company. I was tempted to share the article with the family, completely destroy what was left of Jessica's credibility. My finger hovered over the send button, but something stopped me. I saved the screenshot but didn't share it, just held on to it. Thursday morning, my director called me into her office. 4 parents had requested their children be moved out of my classroom. They'd heard about the Christmas drama through the Denver Mom Network. One parent said she didn't feel comfortable having her child taught by someone who publicly humiliates family members. Another questioned my judgment and conflict resolution skills. My director said my personal life was affecting my professional reputation. This is a small community, and word gets around. I wasn't being fired, but I needed to keep future family issues private. The clinic couldn't afford to lose enrollment because of staff drama. I left her office and went straight to the bathroom to cry. I was facing professional consequences for defending my son from someone who'd bullied him for 5 years. Jessica had been cruel to a child and nobody cared. But I exposed her secrets once, and suddenly I was the problem. That afternoon, Mason's teacher called. Mason had been acting differently, asking other kids, does your family have a lot of money? Telling a classmate his toy car was cheap, refusing to sit next to a kid because his shoes are from Walmart like mine and that means we're poor. This was completely out of character. Mason was normally the most inclusive, kind kid. The teacher recommended counseling. Kids absorb adult conflict even when we think we're protecting them. I hung up feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Protecting Mason was my entire reason for confronting Jessica. And now he was suffering from the fallout, acting out, comparing possessions, judging kids based on money. I'd thought standing up to Jessica would show Mason that mom would always defend him. Instead, I'd created an environment where he was learning that a person's value is measured in dollars. Friday night, I saw Tyler post on Instagram, "When your whole life falls apart and everyone knows about it." Madison had posted a photo of Boulder Prep with the caption, "Last day," and crying emojis. Comments from classmates asking why she was leaving. Mean girls saying, "Heard your family's broke now," and "Guess you can't afford BP anymore." I learned through my cousin that word had spread through Boulder Prep's parent community. Some parents' friends had been ripped off by Brad's dealerships. Parent WhatsApp groups lit up with gossip. The school asked Jessica to withdraw Tyler and Madison for non-payment. Their last day was January 14th. They enrolled in public school near where Brad was staying, going from private school with 12 kids per class to public school with 30. The Boulder Prep kids had found out why they left and shared it on social media. Tyler and Madison went from popular private school kids to those kids whose dad's a criminal. I sat alone in my apartment staring at these kids' social media posts. Two kids who didn't do anything wrong, who were now paying the price for their parents' behavior and for my revenge. I'd wanted to protect Mason, but I'd hurt Tyler and Madison in the process. Saturday, Mom called and said, both Jessica and I needed to come to Sunday dinner. We had to deal with this as a family. She couldn't handle the divided family anymore. The stress was affecting Dad's blood pressure. If we couldn't be civil, she was done hosting family events. It felt like an ultimatum. I was furious they were pressuring me to reconcile when Jessica started this. But I agreed because I didn't want Mason to lose his grandparents over adult drama. Tuesday, I stopped at Starbucks and overheard two women talking about Jessica. One said she'd seen Jessica at the grocery store looking terrible, like she'd been crying for days. The other mentioned Jessica had a complete breakdown at book club, sobbing about how she'd lost everything. Her marriage, her house, her kids' school, everything she'd built. I stood there with my latte, feeling unexpected emotions. For 5 years, I'd seen Jessica as the perfect sister who had everything together. But listening to strangers describe her breakdown, I realized she was probably miserable the whole time. The debt, the pressure, Brad's business failing. Maybe she took out her unhappiness on easy targets like Mason and me because she couldn't admit her own life was falling apart. Thursday, my aunt called. Jessica had lost everything in the bankruptcy, her entire life. Savings was in frozen joint accounts. She had nothing. My parents had given her $15,000 from their retirement savings to help her get on her feet. Uncle Mike gave her $5,000 he'd been saving for his daughter's college. Jessica was literally draining the family's savings because everyone was trying to help her survive. My Christmas revelation had created a domino effect, hurting people who had nothing to do with the original conflict. Friday after school, Mason was quiet in the car. I asked what happened, and he said Tyler told him something. Mason's eyes filled with tears. He said that you told everyone his family's secrets and now they don't have money and it's because of me. That his mom cries every day and they had to leave their house and school and it's my fault. I pulled over and held him, told him none of this was his fault. But even as I said it, I realized Mason was carrying guilt for adult conflicts he didn't understand. And I had no idea how to explain that the world is way more complicated than good people and bad people. Saturday night, I got an email from Jessica. Subject line, "We need to talk." She wrote that she wanted to apologize to Mason but needed to set boundaries about family privacy. She admitted being cruel about my life as a single mom because she was projecting her own insecurity. Watching me seem happy as a single preschool teacher while she was drowning in debt and miserable in her perfect marriage made her jealous and mean. But she also said I had no right to publicly destroy her life at Christmas. I could have confronted her privately about Mason instead of exposing everything to the entire family. Her kids had to leave their school. Tyler was getting bullied. Madison cried herself to sleep. Her marriage was over. She was 35, living with her in-laws. The email was raw and honest in a way Jessica had never been with me. She wasn't making excuses for calling Mason a loser, but she wasn't pretending what I did was justified either. I read it 3 times, trying to figure out if it was real vulnerability or manipulation. Didn't respond that night. After thinking for a week, I texted Jessica suggesting we meet somewhere neutral. We agreed on Washington Park, Sunday, at 2 p.m. It was a cold, gray Denver day. Jessica pulled up in a Mazda, way less fancy than the Mercedes she used to drive. She looked smaller somehow. Target jeans, old North Face jacket, messy ponytail. No designer purse or perfect makeup. We sat at a picnic table overlooking the frozen lake. Jessica spoke first, said she needed to apologize for 5 years of being cruel to Mason and me. She'd been jealous that I seemed happy in my small apartment while she was miserable in her big house with her failing marriage and debt. Told herself she was better than me because she had money and a husband, But really, she was bitter that I had something real while she was living a lie. Calling Mason a loser was unforgivable. She understood if I never wanted to speak to her again. I told her I was sorry for publicly destroying her life at Christmas. I could have confronted her privately. Instead, I went nuclear and made sure everyone knew every humiliating detail. Tyler and Madison were paying the price for something they didn't do. I hadn't thought about them when planning my revenge. We both cried, agreed we'd hurt each other enough it wasn't a Hallmark moment, just two exhausted women agreeing to stop destroying each other. Tuesday, Jessica texted asking if she could come apologize to Mason. I asked Mason if he wanted to talk to her. He said, okay. Wednesday evening, Jessica arrived at my apartment, brought a normal Hot Wheels set from Target, sat on the floor with Mason and told him she was sorry for saying mean things. She'd said them because she was feeling sad and angry about her own problems, but that wasn't a good reason and it wasn't his fault. Mason asked, are you still sad? Jessica paused. Yeah, buddy, I am, but I'm working on feeling better. Mason hugged her. Just like that. Kid forgiveness is simple. He asked if Tyler and Madison could come play sometime. Jessica looked at me. I said, yeah, we could arrange that. The simplicity of his response hit us both hard. We'd made this so complicated, turned it into this massive war. And Mason just forgave her because adults actually apologized. Tyler and Madison hurt, family finances drained, relationships permanently altered. Our family will never go back to pretending everything's perfect. Can't unknow what we know now. Maybe that's better than the fake peace that allowed Jessica to be cruel to a child for 5 years without anyone stopping her. Mason is safe now, knows I'll defend him no matter what, even when it's hard, even when it blows up the family. That matters more than anything else. Even if getting here was messier and more complicated than I planned. Mason looked up at the fireworks with his cousins beside him and smiled. In that moment, I knew we'd all survive this family mess, even if we're never the same.